Hello and welcome to the June Comet Watch. My apologies that there's been at least 2 months where we haven't done a show. That's due to personal issues I've had over here in the United Kingdom, but we're back on schedule. So we're going to start as oh yeah, and before I go any further, my thanks to Luna Lee for playing us into the show. I nearly always forget that. I shouldn't do that. Very bad of me. Okay, so as always, we're going to start the shipping forecast from the British Astronomical Association Comets section. My thanks to Nick James and Jonathan Shanklin for letting us use this all this time. So I'm going to kick it off. The latest discoveries and news. May the 4th, Django Ruan reports 2 Kreutzgruppe comets in CCOR-1 images.
Okay, May 5th, Yang Yu reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
Oops. Hang on, my screen is just on a...
It's okay.
Okay, so May the 6th, discovery of 2026 H2 Leonard reported.
Okay. May 7th, Yang Yu reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCR-1 images.
May the 10th, Eric Branagh, I believe that's correct, reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in C2 images.
May 14th, Yang Yu reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCR-1 images.
May 17th, Django Ruan and Eric Branch report a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
May 18th, Yang Li reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCR-1 images.
May the 19th, discovery of 2026 H3 Bok reported. Oh, that's a name from Star Trek.
Yep. Well, yes, it is. Yang Liu reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR images.
May 20th, Django Ruan reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
May 21st, Zhang Yang reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in C2 images.
May 22nd, Yang Ruan reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in C2 images.
May 25th, Eric Branch reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in C2 images.
May 26th, discoveries of 2026 J1 Pan-stars reported.
May 26th, Washington Blue Plop reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
May 27th, Warchop Boomplod reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
May 29th, Eric Branch reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in C2 images.
May 29th, Eric Branch reports a Mayo comet in C2 images.
June 2nd, Eric Branch reports a Kreutzgruppe comet in CCOR-1 images.
June the 3rd was the update. If there's been no recent updates, you can always try the German Comet Group page or Seiichi Yoshida's page for information, or the Liga Iberoamericana de Astronomia for observations. Okay, Manuel. Elsewhere, okay. So as always, comet magnitudes and observable regions are based on the UK, but may be seen outside. So we'll start with 220P in McNaught, magnitude 8.5, outburst, 45 degrees north to 75 degrees south. It's a morning object. Last visual observation was 2026 June.
2025 R3 Pan-stars, magnitude 9, trend fade, observable from 0 south to 82 south, evening, last observed 2026 May.
88P Howell, 11.5, fading, 35 degrees north to 70 degrees south, morning object. Last observation was 2026 May.
Comet 78 Garrels, magnitude 12, steady, poor elongation, not observed yet.
And guess which one I've got?
Your
29P.
Your favorite.
Wachman, or as I prefer, the first of the 2 London postcode comets, SW1. 13th magnitude question mark, varies 45 degrees north to 55 degrees south. It's an evening object. Last visually observed May 2026.
Comet 2023 R1 Pan-star, magnitude 13.5, steady, observable from 50 north to 65 south, best in the morning, last observed 26th of April.
10p Temple, 14th magnitude, bright, 45 degrees north to 65 degrees south, best in the morning, not yet observed.
Comet 2024 J3 Atlas, 14.5, bright, observable 50 north to 30 south, visibility all night, not observed yet.
161p Hartley IRS, 15th magnitude, bright, 25 degrees south to 85 degrees south, early morning, not yet observed.
34D Gale, question mark magnitude, bright, 50 north to 60 south, evening, not yet observed.
As always, the details are always usually updated at the beginning of each month, but some minor updates may be made more frequently, particularly for brighter comets. The last full update was on June 3rd. The magnitude is always a rough value for the main magnitude reported. Some observers obviously will see the comet brighter than this, others will see it fainter. The observable region, as always, is an approximate indication of the latitude at which the comet may be seen by a visual observer. Obviously under good conditions, comets may be visible outside its range, especially when imaging. The period obviously is for the UK, if the comet is visible for the UK, otherwise for 30 degrees south or the equator as approximate. Beginners will find comets fainter than about 7th magnitude difficult to locate. So I do suggest that they go to the British Astronomical Association's Comet section page. And there's plenty of information on positions and find the charts available. In the news, 220p is an outburst and is now the brightest comet on view. Sadly, it's not visible from the UK. 10p Temple is brightening more rapidly and should be reaching 11th magnitude during this month. And of course, the 44th volume of Comet's Tale, compiled by Nick James, was published in mid-February. They are always looking for contributions for the next issue, possibly out in July. Well, before we go over to our guest, I must admit, it is looking to be a very interesting summer and autumn, and possibly winter for comet observers. So keep your eyes on the information pages and the I can never say the word.
Ephemeris.
Thank you. And do pay attention to what's going on. As you will hear in the interview that's coming up with Nick James, there are quite a lot of good sources of information which will give you accurate information on comets. Anyway, so enough saying that. I will now let the interview play and let everybody enjoy it. Okay, thank you for joining us, Nick. I know that you just mentioned to me before we started recording that Jonathan can't make it, which I do. It's sad, but hey, we'll get him next time.
Yeah, yes.
Now, we've actually spoken before. You've been on the show before quite a while ago. So
yeah, I'm trying to think how long ago. It was definitely quite a while ago.
At least 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the last time we all actually got together was for a Comet section meeting at the Open University.
That was a while ago. Yes, yes.
And we had one of the eggheads there talking about rubble, particularly with Phobos and Deimos, and the actual probes he was involved with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite a while ago.
Yeah, I'm always impressed that the first human thing ever to touch Titan was made in Milton Keynes. It was made at the Open University, the Surface Science Package. So yeah, they've got a lot of people who work on that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So anyway, the history of the BAA Comet section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Over to you.
Okay. So the BAA Comet section is almost as old as the BAA itself. So the BAA was formed in 1890, the BAA Comet section in 1891. The first director was Denning. So I think most people will have heard of Denning. He discovered several comets. In fact, there's a really interesting thing that some of his comets were lost, but fairly recently an asteroid observation was linked with one of his comets. So people have been trying to recover this comet, but I don't think with much success. So yeah, Denning was the first Comet section director back in 1891. And then we've had a whole sequence of directors through the years. Crommelin, probably again one of the very famous directors. He was directed twice actually. So obviously, up for it twice with a small gap in between. And then coming into post-war times, we had Stan Milbourne, who was into computing orbits and doing a lot of observing. Mike Hendry. And then ultimately going through Jonathan Shanklin, who I think currently, after Crommelin, holds the record for longest director, and then me. And I became director quite a while ago, 10 years ago, something like that. It doesn't seem like that, but that's when I became director. And there's been we've been very lucky recently with some really nice comets. So the BAA generally is there to encourage observers. The way that people observe comets has changed dramatically, obviously, since Denning's day. In Denning's day, it was primarily visual, but then it went through photographic, and of course now with digital imaging and people using remote scopes as well. So something, Denning would be astonished by, that you could actually sit at your desk in your house and access a telescope in America and image comets. So yeah, things have changed a hell of a lot, but hopefully we've tried to keep up with the technology in the section. We're here really to encourage observers of all different types, and even people who maybe are not so interested in observing. We've got programs for analyzing things. We're going through our archive, scanning plates and photographs. So there's a lot of data to mine as well, if people are interested.
Yes, because it was Patrick Moore that got me into the comets, into the lunar stuff, and that kind of led one thing from another. I think my most famous goof on the show was getting Kohoutek's Comet and West Comet mixed up for 1973 in Skylab.
Yeah. But
hey ho, when you're trying to do a show and you've got so much stuff in front of you, it happens. But it was so in a lot of cases for me, it was post Apollo. I really got to knew about comets, because Skylab was up there. They were tasked with observing a comet on a close approach, and it was on the news. And of course, going into the 80s, it was all holy mania. Hey, even William Shatner, Captain James T. Kirk, made a video for you to record your comet observations on. I've still got it. I can't play it in the States; it's the wrong format, but I have still got it.
Yes.
It was just one of those incredible times. And at that time, I was working for a certain company, and that was working on a part of Giotto. So obviously, for me, I was barely 20 at the time. I was able to go into the corporate boardroom and watch live Patrick and others at Darmstadt doing the whole Giotto show. And it was one of those really things that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
I've been an itinerant imager. I have actually been submitted to the point where I've been submitting images to pro-ams, and I've learned in a lot of cases what not to do. In a lot of cases, pro-ams don't want beautiful color pictures. They really want good luminance only images because they can do their measurements off the FITS files from luminance. So yeah, for me it was a learning experience. So if, for instance, if my favorite comet, I always seem to get it when I'm doing the forecast. I get 29p SW1.
Vachman, come
Yeah,
on.
and I can never say it. I get told off all the time because I always say it wrong. I don't care. To me, it's one of two comets with a London address, being the other one being SW2.
Right, yeah. But yes, I mean, comets, similar history to you. I think all of us of a certain age were kind of encouraged into astronomy by Apollo and the excitement
Mm.
of the manned space program then. Um, and yes, I mean, Giotto was an amazing mission. I'm in my professional life, actually, I do work for ESA on tracking these spacecraft, and so I was involved in the Rosetta mission, which was the kind of next stage. So Giotto just flew past Halley in a few hours because the relative velocities were so high. I remember watching that program as well. It was really confusing because the way that they chose to display the images of that Giotto was sending back was this weird false color palette. And I do remember, I think it was James Burke and Patrick trying to interpret what these images were, and it was difficult because it wasn't obvious that we were seeing the inner coma and nucleus of a comet. But it was, yeah, that was pretty amazing. And then, of course, coming forward to another comet which has got a nice name, Churyumov-Gerasimenko, 67P.
I can never say that one. That's
Uh,
CG.
yeah, which Rosetta went to and dropped Philae onto the surface. I mean, I do think it's just extraordinary, and it's a lot of it has been European. So, you know, Giotto was a European mission, and Rosetta was a European mission. So, and I was privileged to be involved in the Rosetta mission, and that was just an amazing thing. A long mission that had lots of places where it could have gone wrong, but actually succeeded and has told us an awful lot about a particular comet. So 67P.
Well, the other thing, of course, is Europe is leading the way again with the ICE, the Interceptor Comet expedition, where we're going to have there potentially is to have several vehicles look at specific place spots to use, so that any comet can be coming in from any direction, and they can look to intercept and do a lot more science. Really, it's stepping stones. So we showed we could do it. So Vega, Giotto, all showed we can go to a comet successfully. We can orbit it. We can get data. And in the Rosetta mission, we actually landed a probe, which was a real big one because there's no the gravitational.
Yeah, landing on something that's got an escape velocity of less than 1 meter a second is quite hard because you just bounce off if you don't do it properly. And yes, we learned a hell of a lot about comets from that mission, and yeah, it's really good that kind of Europe is leading the way with comets. But you mentioned about amateur observations of comets. One of the things I found fascinating for the Rosetta mission was the amateur observations of that comet that we used to put the spacecraft observations in context. So you've got a spacecraft that's only a few thousand kilometers from the nucleus, but amateurs were actually observing that comet through the apparition, doing astrometry and photometry of the comet. And yes, you're right. For sort of scientific observation, you really want to have as close to the original data as possible. So I mean, clearly prefer to have FITS files that are either filtered, but at least mono FITS files. I mean, you see these wonderful comet images that people post these days, and they are absolutely fantastic. But there's a lot of processing between the original image and the final product. And so whilst they're quite useful to see some of the morphology of comets, so the details in the tail and around the coma, sometimes, well, most of the time for scientific use, you want to actually have access to the original FITS files.
Now, we just briefly mentioned Pro-Am.
Mhm.
Could you go into that in a bit deeper?
Yeah, so I think I've been observing comets for long enough to know that people keep predicting that amateur contributions are going to become less significant because professionals have got bigger and bigger telescopes, more impressive kit. And of course, we've got Vera Rubin coming, which is going to discover a huge number of objects, sweep up a load of objects. But I think my experience has been that there's always a place for amateurs in observing objects for two reasons. One is that amateurs basically can observe what they want. So they can observe things that are maybe not at the sort of top of the list that professionals do. And the other is that amateurs can observe things with a much faster cadence than a lot of professionals. So, for instance, one of our programs in the BAA is monitoring comets for outbursts. And there's one very famous comet, you've already mentioned it, 29P, Schwarzmann-Bachmann, which Richard Miles runs a program within our Comet section looking for outbursts on 29P. And we have a huge database of magnitudes measured of that comet. One of the key things for all of this kind of work is having a standardized approach. So you'll know if you look at comet magnitudes, you often get really large scatters in the magnitudes. But if you use a common approach where everyone agrees on what kind of photometric aperture they use, what kind of techniques they use, you can actually get really good consistency in the measurements. So we've got really good light curves of the outbursts of 29P. Richard has worked with a number of professional observers to do analysis of that. It would be true to say, in fact, that it's one of those examples where professional observers can sometimes be quite resistant to changing their theories. So we believe that with 29P we have evidence that some of the ways that the professionals think these outbursts work is actually not correct. But it's can be difficult to get professionals to accept that and maybe consider alternatives. There are other comets that outburst. So a few years ago, we had Comet 12P, which showed outbursts on the way in, and we monitored that in a similar way. And that data has been used by a number of professionals in papers to do analysis. So I think amateur contributions to comet science are still there. We just have to be smart about what we do and the areas that we concentrate on. And I generally find that professionals are really open to accepting data from amateurs and working with amateurs, and most of them also will acknowledge that. So and it's great for an amateur observer to get their names in the author list of a paper to monthly notices or something like that. So yeah, we certainly within the section want to try and encourage that pro-am. We work with a number of fairly well-known comet astronomers within the UK and Europe and wider, and so there's lots of projects for people to get their teeth into.
Yes, because I remember being told a story I've been up to Mount Hamilton, to the Liga.
That's a great observatory up there.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
And they've managed to repair all the wind damage, which is even better. And the scope wasn't even damaged.
Yeah, even though a big chunk of the dome fell down. Yeah.
But the comment that was made to me when I was touring was the fact that for all the telescopes that professionals have, time is limited, and because they have to fight both with a really rock hard and super good thesis as to why and proposal as to why they get time, and they have to have the financial backing to get the time. Whereas amateur astronomers like ourselves, we have pretty much got professional grade instruments in our garden. We can do pretty much everything that a professional scope can do, except perhaps one thing, and we don't have the ability to shoot lasers into the sky, so we can calibrate our optics. I think the CAA would get very, very upset if we all started doing that across the whole of England.
Yeah.
But we have Lucky Imaging, which seems to be very, very good. And we can, because we've spent so much time and effort with our equipment and our software, we are producing or able to produce top-notch images. Again, because we know what's required, we can work within the FITS format. Our software programs do that quite happily. And we have unlimited time on our telescopes. The only thing that stops us is the weather.
Yeah, that's very true. And in fact, the other thing I think is that a lot of amateur astronomers, obviously their backgrounds can help in that. You mentioned software, so there's lots of really clever people around who write really impressive processing software, which helps us a lot. There are a lot of people around who were kind of scientists or engineers or whatever, and then have retired and can apply that knowledge too. I think, yeah, you're right. In terms of what we can do, it's similar to professionals. I mean, there's a few things clearly where aperture really counts. So
Oh yeah.
amateurs are doing spectroscopy of comets, but it's hard generally unless the comet is really bright. So that's the kind of place where you need an 8-meter telescope if you're going to be doing spectroscopy of fainter comets, and amateurs don't generally have access to that. But I say that, but Richard Miles works with a group called Comet Chasers in the UK, which is run by a person called Helen Usher, and they have access to the it used to be what was called the Fox telescope. It's now called the LCO GT, but they're basically telescopes up to about 2 meters aperture, which they get access to. So amateurs can, if they team up correctly, get access to large apertures too. But we can do an awful lot with smaller apertures. So just general monitoring of comet magnitudes with smaller apertures. We within the BAA, we submit our observations to a site called COBS, the Comet Observations Database, which is a really good place to go to see the latest magnitudes of comets. So yeah, I think amateurs have got plenty of work to do, limited really just by the amount of time that we want to spend on it and the weather. And of course, with remote telescopes now, you can do stuff using telescopes in the Atacama in Chile, and get some pretty amazing results.
Well, I'm able to get into Chile, Australia, and the Canaries on a regular basis. If the Canaries is socked out with weather, I'll see if the object I'm interested in is going to be visible through either Chile or through Australia.
Yeah.
So as an amateur, I can go online, I can set up my targets, click a button, and get my results. I know a lot of people don't like it. Yeah, you're not a proper astro imager. Yes, I am, because I have to understand how RA and DEC works. I need to be able to see if the target is even visible from the location. And I'm using some of the best equipment in the world.
That's some of the best sites as well.
Yeah, exactly. The SLU Australia telescope is just off Siding Springs. It's also got iTelescope set up inside Siding Springs. They've got a huge number of scopes there. So really, we have access and we have equipment that's looked after by the professionals.
Yeah.
And of course,
yeah, sorry, Nick.
Go on.
I say I do remote imaging, but I still like having a telescope at the bottom of the garden. I do prefer that kind of hands-on thing where I can go and kick the telescope if it needs anything doing to it. But remote imaging is certainly really useful for a lot of cases, particularly when you've got a comet that's at a declination that you can't access from where we are in Northern Europe, or if you get long periods of cloudy weather, which we do get. I mean, there was a period earlier in the winter when I think we had about a whole month when I didn't see the sun, let alone
Yeah.
start. So,
Well, I remember, I think it was F2 Swan when that was down under. That was absolutely breathtaking, and we didn't get it when it finally came up north. It wasn't as good as it had been down for the southern observers.
well, that's quite often the case, but we have been very lucky with some really nice comets that have
Yeah.
been good in the northern hemisphere. I mean, a few years ago, I was standing on La Palma looking at 2023 A3 Shushinshan Atlas, so another nice comet name. That was the comet with the anti-tail, really big dust tail, and I remember seeing that, naked eye, and that was definitely we benefited there from it being a northern hemisphere object, and we've had a few others as well that have really favoured the north. So you often read that the best comets seem to be in the southern hemisphere. I don't think that's entirely true. I think we've been pretty well served with some nice comets in the north for the last few years.
And then, of course, we had Hayataki, and we've had Hale Bopp as well. So
Yeah, indeed, and they were, again, two very different comets. They remind me of the Father Ted episode because Hayataki was small and nearby, whereas Hale Bopp was big and far away. Um, and I would say that Hyakutaku is the most impressive comet I've ever seen. I was very lucky. I was on Mount Teide on March the 21st and 22nd when it was at its closest at the zenith, and it was just an astonishing sight in the sky. But Hale-Bopp too, of course, and we've just lost Alan.
yeah,
Which is a huge loss to the comet world. But that was just an amazing comet, Hale-Bopp. Massive nucleus, visible in the sky for months on end. Almost not really, but almost became bored with it by the end of it because it was around for so long. But it was an amazing comet, and we were very lucky in 96, 97 with those two. But we've had good ones. In the last 10 years or so, we've had some really nice comets.
yeah. It seems to me we've been getting quite a few decent ones, and of course we've had our interstellar visitor.
Oh yeah, well those are really interesting, of course, aren't they? And the most recent one, 3I Atlas, was the most interesting of the lot because we actually got to observe it for a long time. So Borisov 2I was it was cometary and it was interesting, but 3I we could observe, and in fact it's still observable if you can get down to about 20 some second magnitude or so, I think. But it was, yeah, amazing object. You get all of the nutters coming out of the woodwork,
Oh yeah, I remember.
ascribing it to alien civilizations, but I just think it's extraordinary as an amateur observer. I don't normally do visual, but for 3I, when it was near its brightest, I did look through a telescope and I was looking at it, and there was this faint fuzzy thing in the field, which, on the face of it's not that exciting. But when you think what it is, it's actually a visitor from another star system that's probably been traveling through the galaxy for several billion years before it got to us. It's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, I remember all the Larry Niven fans were like ecstatic because people were ascribing it to being a ring world and everything else.
Yeah, well, the very first one, of course, was
Oumuamua.
Oumuamua.
Yeah,
Yeah, one eye. Some of the images, well, not images, but the artist's impression that people sort of gave, it was very long and thin, and so it was just like Arthur Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama. It was
yeah,
the same kind of long, thin object. And again, an interesting object because it kind of pretended to be a comet towards the end of its passage out of the solar system with the change to its orbit for non-gravitational effects. But I think with Vera Rubin coming, we're going to get a lot more of these interstellar objects now. They'll probably be mostly quite faint, so they'll be difficult for us as amateurs to get, but just amazing that we can actually observe these things, I think.
I think we got lucky in that we spotted them the first three when we did, because it makes you wonder how many visitors we've actually had prior. Probably quite a few.
Yeah, almost certainly. I mean, the fact now that we've got Atlas, which is very, very good at picking up these objects, is a kind of foretaste of what we're going to get with Vera Rubin, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is all a matter of being able to detect them, and I'm sure there have been interstellar objects observed in the past, but were just not recognized as that.
And of course, most people don't realize is that the BAA doesn't stand on it. The Comet section doesn't stand on its own. It also talks to other organizations like ALPO, it's Comet section. And I know that there's the German one, there's the Liga, Iberoamericana, it's the Spanish one.
Yeah.
I really have to go in to do the Manuel bit, I'm afraid, to actually pronounce the word correct.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think like lots of things in astronomy, it's very international. We clearly encourage as much cooperation as possible, and that's important. In fact, I ought to mention we also cooperate a lot with the Swedish Astronomical Society, SAF, and that's important because comets, you want to visit, you want observations of them as the world turns around, so over 24 hours and over different longitudes and different latitudes, and so yeah, cooperation is really good. So we have people submitting observations to the BAA who are all over the world. I'm in regular contact with the various other different groups around the world. It made much easier now, obviously by the internet and email communication. Looking back in our archive at letters from the 50s and 60s, and it was quite hard to do then, but now it's very easy, and it's like we are doing now. You can talk just as easily to somebody in the States or Australia as you can to somebody down the road.
Yeah, because I know we've had Terry Lovejoy on the show before multiple times, and I think one of his greatest wishes is that there was some formal way that astronomers in country A could hand over observations, live observations, to country B, to country C, and so on. But in a lot of respects, that's what we're doing in reality, particularly with the internet, with email, with Zoom, and everything else. We can now reach out very, very easily and say, okay.
So there are lots of online resources to do that. So CometWatch and other things. There's Comets ML, the mailing list.
Yeah.
And it's great that you actually see all of these really top observers posting their stuff and quick interactions that happen. And I think that's another of the things that technology has just changed completely now, that you get such quick feedback on things.
And of course, I'm sure Brian Marsden would have loved to have had it in his day.
I'm old enough to remember. I knew Brian well. I mean, of course, Brian came from the UK, was a BAA member, was a great supporter of amateur comet observing. Gareth Williams, who he then brought into CWAT, was the same. And yeah, I really appreciate what Brian Marsden did, and things are not quite as smoothly running now as maybe they used to be when Brian ran things. But I don't want to get too much into that politics.
That's true. I suppose one really, if ESA does get ice off the ground and in space, I suppose really SW1 is the perfect target because we have got the database. We know about we've timed the outbursts so much now that we can simply say, well, there's a particular rhythm, and this is when it would be safe to be close to the comet. And of course, it's a Jupiter family comet. It's close, real time.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a difficult comet to get to because of where it is. But we would be thrilled. I mean, Richard Miles, who runs our 29p program, would be thrilled to get a spacecraft out there to look at 29p. There have been a number of proposals to do that, and they've never actually got funded. But it would be a fascinating comet to see. It's as you say, it has relatively regular outbursts which are related to its rotation period. It has very interesting sequences of outbursts that are potentially related to the way that material is leaving the comet and then falling back onto the comet. So just a very interesting object. But at the moment, in the absence of spacecraft going there, a lot of that data comes from amateur observation.
Yeah, and it's like the Hubble team. The Hubble team relies on the AVSSO. I think that's right.
AAVSO.
That's it. Thank you. And of course, BAA members are involved in variable stars.
Yeah.
So every time that they pick a target, they can turn to the amateur community, say, well, in X amount of time, we're going to be looking at this. We need to know what the star is doing, so we can look at that direction and not damage the equipment.
Yeah.
So it kind of all gets together, because if Hubble wants to look at a comet, it's also going to be thinking about, well, is there a variable star in the picture? Is it going to be in outburst, or is it going to be at minimum? And it can turn to the amateur community for that information.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And it's an ongoing project that's I don't ever really going to think it's going to stop.
Yeah. No, I think, as I said a little bit earlier, that there's always kind of predictions to the end of amateur astronomy for all sorts of reasons, but we always manage to find ways of making contributions, and battling the things that affect us in terms of being able to make those observations, like light pollution and satellites.
Yeah, well, the sun may be very nice to us and do something about those satellites. Well, we know it's happened.
Yeah, we do. That's right. So,
yeah.
and they're designed for relatively short lifetimes anyway. So,
well, that and the part that a satellite chain owner didn't listen to the people who know space weather, and he lost a big chunk of his inventory, being unavoidably re-entered into the Earth's atmosphere. But again, it's all part of space life, really.
Yeah,
now,
it is. Yeah.
The last thing I want to cover is the. Let me pull up my notes. Yes, I know, folks, it's scary. I actually have notes. It's the Edgar Wilson Award, because I know there's a lot of controversy about it.
Yes, indeed.
But let's not be too controversial.
No, okay. Yes, there is a lot of controversy involved, and I don't really want to get too much into that.
Okay.
But just giving it a little bit of background. So there's always been Comet prizes for people who've discovered comets. So, one of the great comet observers in the Victorian age was Edward Emerson Barnard.
Yeah.
And he, I think, bought his first house in Nashville on the basis of some prizes that he'd won for discovering comets. So the Edgar Wilson Award is basically a prize for amateurs who've discovered comets. I think Edgar Wilson was Kentucky, something like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
Kentucky businessman.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So he left some money in his will for basically an annual prize for observers who discovered comets. I think that was back in 1990s, something like that. It maybe started.
Yeah, I think it was 99.
Yeah. So we've already kind of mentioned Brian Marsden, Gareth Williams. So, as I say, I don't want to get too much into the politics of this, but there's basically the Minor Planet Center, which deals with all of the astrometry that people submit. Is, as its name implies, is more focused on minor planets than it is comets. And then there's the Central Bureau of Astronomical Telegrams, which is what Brian and Gareth used to be involved in, and they're the people who, I think, up until relatively recently, had the responsibility for giving out this prize and naming comets as well.
Yeah.
So Dan Green is involved with that, and I think Dan's got more visibility of what's going on here than pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think the Edgar Wilson Award exists, but then there was a long hiatus from about 2014 where because amateurs are still discovering comets, you very few visual discoveries, but there are amateurs who have some really impressive setups that are almost semi-professional. So
Yeah.
Borisov as an example, but Alan Murray in Chile again. So they've been discovering comets, but there were the Edgar Wilson Award wasn't awarded. And it went on for years like this. And I know Jonathan within the BAA mentioned this every time that because we have an annual paper about the comets of a certain year, and he would mention that, well, these amateurs discovered comets, but they didn't get the Edgar Wilson Award. Anyway, I think recently what's happened is that and the reason for that is I think it was it went over to the Minor Planet Center or the Smithsonian Observatory to issue the awards, and they didn't do it. So there was a long period when they didn't issue the awards, and then they were kind of maybe pushed, browbeaten, whatever, into issuing the awards retrospectively, which they've done. But the controversy now is that the award consisted of a plaque and actually a quite substantial monetary prize.
Yeah.
And those things have not been going out to the people who've discovered the comets. I only know this from stuff I've read online, but there's some dispute, I think, about the fact that the money that was intended to go for the prizes is being reallocated to other purposes, and that's where the controversy is at the moment. But at least the award is there, so you can go online, you can look on the Edgar Wilson Award page, and you can see the names of the amateur observers who've discovered comets. I just think that they haven't been receiving their plaque and award. So there's definitely some controversy there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Because I know that Don Mackholtz has finally been recognised.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of famous comet discoverers, in that hiatus, were not recognised at all. So at least they have been recognised now. I mean, at least
that's the important.
The awards have been, they're listed as winners of the awards. I think the controversy now is exactly what they get for the award. But it's, as I say, there's a long history of awards for discovering comets, and I think Edgar Wilson is the most recent example of that.
It seems to me that we do have a good philanthropic backing of amateur astronomy. Full stop.
Yeah.
If you look back, all right, Mount Wilson, Palomar, they were all done with people from people like Carnegie, etc.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of the people who used the equipment were amateurs. Clyde Torbay, for instance, he was an amateur astronomer. His professional job was to blink plates. That was it.
Yeah.
He still managed to discover Pluto.
Yeah, well, he did that. He did that by blinking the plates that he took with the telescope at Lowell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he came into Lowell specifically to discover the planet Pluto, didn't he? But he was recognized because of his abilities as an amateur astronomer and what he'd done. And yeah, you talk about that. I mean, you mentioned Mount Hamilton earlier. That's another example of an observatory that was endowed with a large sum of money through a legacy of somebody who wanted to advance astronomy as part of their legacy. So,
well, at least it still happens. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I think it's more common in the States than it is in Europe, possibly. But
yeah, there was an undercurrent of feeling that the reason Carnegie, etc., was doing it was for absolution because they were heavy-handed businessmen. No, they were just canny with the money, and they knew what this. If you were employed by them, you were expected to put a good day's work in for a reasonable pay, reasonable for the period. And at the end of the day, they had no one to leave it to. So, and they were looking at this, so they decided, why not invest in the sciences?
Yeah.
And they're given the fact that we are destroying our sciences by trying to decolonize everything. It's sad because people like Carnegie had a vision. Bill Gates, for all his faults, he puts money into medical research and everything. The foundation him and his wife have.
Mm-hmm.
They have a broad spectrum that they cover, and they are given the money for the advancement of humankind. And they will, if you have a good proposal that needs backing, they will review it, and if they like it and if it works, you'll get support. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. If anything, it's probably beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be so philanthropy of businessmen setting up observatories and whatever used to be a quite big thing in the UK in Victorian times. I think it's just less common now, but it's certainly something that in the US has been quite a big thing, and a lot of the observatories that we all know and love over there came through that that approach.
In fact, slight sidetrack, Lovell Observatory goes on the air every February. Radio amateurs come in, they set up equipment, and they put the observatory on the air to celebrate the discovery of Pluto.
Yeah.
Mount Palomar has a ham radio club. I'm actually a member of it.
Yeah.
And I read their stuff. I got interested. I joined, and it's a very interesting experience speaking to fellow ham radio operators who are also involved with the telescopes.
Yeah.
And the day-to-day use of them. So, and I also seem to remember that Professor Ian Morrison, the late Ian Morrison of Manchester University and Jodrell Bank, he was a radio amateur.
Yeah.
And I seem to notice this theme that the two hobbies seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarity, and of course, there's the BAA has a radio astronomy section, so you can do the two hobbies at the same time, both radio and astronomy, and it's the same, similar kind of things, the technology and the software and the computing and all that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because South Illinois have a ham radio group that does nothing but meet on a repeater, 2-meter repeater, to set up observing sessions and share results.
Yeah.
Now, how brilliant is that?
Yeah.
They put it. They have a recording of the radio session on their website. So every time they've had a meeting on the air, you can listen to a bunch of astronomers having a rag tune about what they're observing, how they're doing it, and what the results are that they got.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing about amateur astronomy is everybody exchanging ideas, exchanging what they're doing, talking about what they're doing, and hopefully, supporting others to do their observing. I've generally found in amateur astronomy that people are very approachable, really interested in telling you what they're doing, really interested in helping you if you've got any particular problems, that kind of thing. So I think it's a really good community, to use that modern word.
Yeah. Okay, we're both of the generation that remembers Patrick Moore every month on BBC Two at 5 to midnight.
Yeah, usually very late at night. Yeah.
Just before the Open University took over the airwaves. And some of the things the live broadcast from a telescope in England, trying to observe Saturn.
That was George Hull's observatory, wasn't it? Which is famous. There's a great clip of Patrick trying to observe, and clouds keep coming along to cover over.
Then there was a solar eclipse with Patrick on Selsey Beach, and saying, "No, we're not going to see anything at all. It's complete." Oh, look, it was just a faint slither of the sun, and it's gone.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I knew Patrick when he was around. He was a very, very interesting character, but he was so full of enthusiasm. He
Mm.
really was. You couldn't come away from a talk with Patrick not being really enthused about stuff. I mean, he had opinions. He had quite strong opinions, but but he was an observer. He knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Kahutek early on. There's another one where because Kahutek, of course, was the comet of the century that didn't actually turn out to be as bright as people thought. And there's a sky at night where they're trying to find Kahutek and they can't find it, and it's the same kind of thing. It's the drama of going
Mm.
out, getting everything set up. And we've all been there, going out, getting everything set up, getting ready for things, and then clouds come along, and then you can't find what you're looking for. So, we've all been in that situation. It's very frustrating, but it's part of what we do, isn't
I tend to think it gives us perhaps interesting outlook on life.
it? Yeah, I mean, I think astronomy does generally. I think you realize that you're incredibly lucky to be able to observe these incredible things in the universe, but in reality, you're a tiny little speck of dust on a small planet somewhere, and the universe will go on perfectly happily even if you're not around. I think astronomy just makes you realize, yeah, how important the Earth is and how important the everything. So I'm not a very spiritual person, but I do find sometimes when you're kind of under a dark sky, just staring up at the starry sky, you do get this kind of impression of how incredibly small you are in a big universe.
And then Monty Python had to make a song up about it.
Yes, indeed. And it's how I know the size of the galaxy because it's 100,000 from
Yeah.
here, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. They're
But
responsible for a lot, Monty Python.
yeah, including the Spanish Inquisition, and now for something totally different.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of shows you just the fun side of it. Because if people like Monty Python can find a way to poke fun at it in a stage show, then it's got to be good.
Yeah.
And of
No.
course, we had Patrick turning up playing the xylophone.
Yeah, Patrick would turn his hand to pretty much anything, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I met him twice, and my first introduction to him was at a BA meeting when he was president. He was giving a lecture on how to measure the height of a peak in a lunar crater.
mhm.
And Commander Henry Hatfield had to stand up and ask Patrick exactly how did he know that.
Yeah.
And I think the meeting overran by about an hour.
Well, yeah, I knew Henry Hatfield as well, and he was quite an interesting character,
Mm.
and they would kind of bounce off each other, so you'd get very long discussions
Oh,
between
yes.
between the two of them. So yeah, our meetings now don't generally tend to have those kind of really big standout characters anymore, but we still have some sort of interesting characters around.
So I think just to start wrapping things up a bit, we've been on the go for about an hour. We haven't done too badly.
Gosh, I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got a little clock on the side of my screen.
right.
I keep an eye on. So if somebody's new to astronomy and comets have seized their attention,
Yeah.
what is the best way to get seriously involved?
Okay, so I would say this because I'm the director of the BAA Comet section. Go to the BAA website, look up the Comet section. On the Comet section webpage, there's a link to our observing guide. I would be the first to admit that needs a bit of a refresh. It's about 5 years old, so technology's come along a bit, but it's a really good starting point to what are comets, why are we interested in them, why do we want to observe them, what can we do, and a whole range of different things that you can observe with different size telescopes. So I would start there. the BAA's also got a great collection of meeting videos on YouTube, and I've given a few talks on comet observing. In fact, the last meeting we had, which it was called the George Alcock Memorial Lecture, so it's in recognition of George Alcock, who discovered 5 comets and 5 novae. I was talking about the history of the comet section. So if you delve around there's lots of really good stuff to get you going. Obviously, that we have a mailing list for the BAA Comet section. There's all sorts of online resources as well. Ultimately, if you want to go down that route, join the BAA. We've got lots of programs within the Comet section that you can get involved in. You don't need to be a member to do that, but it's good if you are, because basically it helps to support us and what we do. So yeah, I think that's a good starting place. There's lots of good stuff online. I mean, I think what we try and do within the BAA is make sure that the stuff that we publish is actually of good quality. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the internet. We all know that's a bit variable. So we do try to make sure we've got good stuff. So yeah, if you start with the observing guide, start with the section. If anyone's particularly interested in any of the programs, they can contact me, and we can take it from there.
Brilliant. So thank you for coming, Nick. I think this is your second trip around comets with us.
I think it is, yeah.
And I hope to have you back in the near future. And so I think it just remains for me to say it's good night from me.
And good night from me. It's like the two Ronnies, this, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh boy. And of course they did the Stars at Night sketch.
Yes, they did, which is hilarious. It's again another thing worth looking up on YouTube. It's very funny.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll say good night now, and thank you, Nick, for joining us. And
Yeah.
Luna Lee, please just play us out.